What is up, guys? Rick Hawkus here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we are going to be taking a closer look at the brand new Hawkmoon Exotic Hand Cannon just added into Destiny 2 Beyond Light with a brand new exotic quest. But how good is this thing really? Well, to find out, we're going to do a little more than play a couple Crucible games. Instead, we're going to get a full 6-man fire team all utilizing this weapon, and we're going to take it through the largest raid in Destiny history, Last Wish, to see how it really performs in an endgame environment. And so, let's get started. Now, first things first, let's take a look at this exotic weapon. And by the way, if you want to get it for yourself, I've done a complete guide on how to do so. Check it out, it's linked up above. But the intrinsic exotic perk of this weapon is Paracausal Shot. Final blows and precision hits with Hawkmoon grant stacks of paracausal charge. The final round of the magazine deals bonus damage based on the number of stacks. Stowing Hawkmoon on the final round removes this bonus. So, very importantly for its PvE performance, it says precision hits and not just final blows, which means against a single target, against a boss, it will be triggering Paracausal Shot. So if you land all headshots, you're going to get that ×7 Paracausal Shot damage, and that last shot will deal a significant amount of damage. How significant? Well, let's start here with the first encounter against Cali. Now, when you're defending the plates, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a very good hand cannon. The stats of this weapon are outrageous. Like, for its archetype, the amount of stability it has, the amount of handling it has especially, are fantastic. So it takes down those thralls with ease, and even though it's a little bit overkill, it's always satisfying to get like a 20,000 damage headshot against one of them. That does matter against the knight at the end. You can kill that guy pretty easily with a Paracausal Shot. But moving on to Kalli herself. Well, this gun is actually capable of inflicting a significant amount of damage. With a buff and a debuff going, I was hitting more than 80,000 damage for that Paracausal Shot. Now, that's going to put the Hawkmoon well ahead of most other primaries when it comes to damage output. However, the problem is that all of your damage is stored in that final round. So if you miss it, or Kalli is wailing her head around, which she is known to do, your damage completely tanks. So having a more consistent damage output from, most other weapons would be a bit preferable than going all or nothing on that final round. With all of that being said, the damage is significant, and as you can see, we nearly got the one phase. We did have to go back for one last damage phase. I am confident that if we had incorporated a Warmind cell properly and then used Mask of Bacchus for another 10% damage, or at least some of us did, maybe we could go for that one phase. I feel like it is possible, but at that point, you're doing a lot to make a gun one phase when so many others could easily get that one phase without that much trouble. Like, that's not the point. The point is, how good is this in the landscape of your arsenal? And I think that the Hawkmoon, while it is a significantly high damage primary, it isn't quite there for Kalli, and therefore it gets, in this encounter, a 6.5 out of 10. But it's time to move on to the second encounter against Shuro Chi. Now here, there is no coming back later. We have to do 1/6 of her health or the entire fire team wipes. Is the Hawkmoon capable of doing that? Well, as you can see, it actually is, and it is with a certain degree of consistency. Like, you're going to see a lot of damage phases against Shuro Chi, and the Hawkmoon is capable of getting that chunk of her health down. It really doesn't hurt that Shuro Chi is a lot more stable and less flaily than Kalli, so it's a lot easier to guarantee that landing of the final shot, which does all your damage. But yeah, this little primary weapon is able of kicking out a pretty significant amount of damage. And here we have a lot more adds to deal with as well. And the Hawkmoon is totally fine at doing that. Like, pretty easy to kill most of these guys, and it is always nice when you get a paracausal shot off against a knight or potentially one of the ogres that you see around. Or even you're just killing an enemy from way further of a distance than you'd normally be able to with a hand cannon. With all of that being said, although it's competent at both aspects, it isn't necessarily the best. Like, it does struggle sometimes against ad clearing, and we were getting a little close with some of those damage phases. So overall, I'm going to give the Hawkmoon an 8 out of 10 here. Certainly good and capable, but not quite the absolute best of the best. And so it's time to move on from there to Morgoth, and you know we going for that one phase. So at the beginning part, again, you're dealing with ads. This thing is totally fine. It's not entirely fine, however, against some of the more powerful enemies. The Eyes of Riven with their solar shield can even eat a paracausal shot, unfortunately, and I'll be honest, a hand cannon against Taken, which are known for teleporting, is not necessarily the best combination. However, it's certainly not lacking, but against Morgoth himself, as you can see, even though we were able to get the one phase, it came pretty close. Now, we're a little panicky and disorganized, but still, this is certainly not the best weapon to use against Morgoth. But with that being said, it can still one phase a raid boss, which most other primary weapons can't even come close to doing, and that is certainly impressive. It also really helps that Morgoth's crit is the size of the planet Earth, so it's impossible to miss your paracausal shot. But overall here, that means I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Still a very capable weapon. But moving on from there, we have the Vault encounter, which always interests me because there's no boss fights, there's just a few powerful enemies, which is what you're going to face most of your Destiny experience. So, against the normal red bar ads, as always, pretty fantastic. And here actually, like, being able to snipe some of the Taken phalanxes and acolytes in like the very back of the map, or even on other people's parts of the map with that paracausal shot, that actually does come up quite a bit. But against the big boy knights, so, although this gun is capable of taking them down, like, if you land all 7 shots and a paracausal shot on the knights, it does a huge amount of damage. Like, you get that paracausal shot and it absolutely chunks them. But man, the teleporting really does come up with these knights. Teleporting and also just spazzing around. They have quite a large flinch animation, and it can be really tough to not only land all of those 7 previous shots to build up the paracausal shot, but again, landing that actual paracausal shot. Like, they're always going to teleport right when you're trying to hit that final shot, if you know what I'm saying. So it can be a little bit tricky, and also you really don't have a lot of time, because if your third of the map has the Taken barrier up, the knights emerge from there and they're kind of right at the platform that they need to go to wipe the team. So you don't have a lot of time to set up your paracausal shot. So in this encounter, although the damage is actually there, the setup does make this weapon suffer, and it's so much easier to use a sword or a shotgun. So here, I wasn't exactly as impressed with the Hawkmoon as I was in other encounters, and therefore, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. But in any event, it's time to move on to the big daddy of damage phases against Riven. And you know, we going for the cheese. Just how much damage can the Hawkmoon dish out in a limited window of time? Well, as you can see, pretty straightforward. Set up in front of Riven, got as much bonuses as we could, and then just started shooting her in the mouth. It does count as a crit, so you are able to build up that paracausal shot damage. You can see I even did hit around for like 99,000 damage. Unfortunately, however, it wasn't enough and we were not able to get the 1 phase. However, as you can see from the damage, some of us were hitting for above 300,000 damage, and that for a primary weapon is kind of insane. It's kind of funny actually, we have people in the 300,000s and then the rest of us are kind of at 200,000. That difference is basically 1 paracausal shot. So those of us that were able to squeak in just 1 more paracausal shot were getting way more damage than the others, and that is, like I talked about earlier, kind of the downside of putting everything in that final shot in terms of your damage output. If you don't get it, you're kind of screwed. But of course, 300,000 damage for a primary is quite impressive, and therefore I'm gonna give this weapon here a 6 out of 10. It just has to be above average, but certainly not something you're really gonna use here. But we do have one final encounter, the Queen's Walk. How is the Hawkmoon here? Well, I thought it would be pretty good, but unfortunately, as you can see when we first jump out, yeah, it does have a lot of setup time, and against these shielded powerful enemies, it's not quite what you want to be using. Now, as you continue forward in the Queen's Walk, it is pretty fantastic at just sniping down the normal red bar enemies, and again, paracausal shotting them from really far distances matters quite a bit here, but overall, it kind of has the same problems as the vault encounter. When you do find those powerful enemies, you don't have enough setup time to deal with them because you're kind of constantly moving forward. You only have a limited window, and the Hawkmoon isn't really good in those scenarios. So overall, in the Queen's Walk, this weapon gets a 6.5 out of 10. So overall, how did the Hawkmoon perform? Well, certainly, for a primary, this thing is kind of insane. You need to remember that this is something where the ammo is widely available, right? And it's still capable of 1-phasing certain bosses. That is fantastic. However, the fact that that requires a lot of setup and all of the damage is put into that final round, which can lead to consistency issues, are some downsides. Overall, I'm going to give this weapon a 7 out of 10, certainly above average and almost top tier for a primary. And so guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.